sometimes just backing up and really exploring like what the banking, system looks like at a really simple level, which is like us as individuals have idle cash. That idle cash you most likely have sitting in a bank unless it's in your mattress. But for the dollars that are sitting with banks, they're using those for their lending practices. And not that, my dollars go to specific loans that I want to see, but rather I'm funding a bank's overall lending practices. So if I disagree with how that bank is, lending their money, or it doesn't align with my values, I'm still invested in it. I'm still funding it. So I think when we talk about like traditional banks then versus community banks, it's what are our deposit dollars really doing? I mean, there's obviously a purpose for traditional big banks. But I think, at least for me and my value set, community banks, I'm here in Orlando. I have, small businesses in town that I love to support. And when I bank at a community bank, I know that the dollars that I'm earning locally are also being invested back in my community locally, since community banks primarily have a lending practice that funds their local communities as well as opposed to, the financial economy at large.
And I guess I wear a dual hat in my professional role outside the podcast, where part of what I do is sustainability, but the other part is marketing. And the marketing hat in me loves the tagline of Climate First Bank, which is "Bank like tomorrow depends on it." And maybe to start things off, you touched on that lightly, but can we start by looking at how maybe traditional banks have fallen short when it comes to this future-looking, environmental impact-looking way about banking?
I think, at least most of your podcast listeners would agree that, climate change is real. Like we see it in a lot of our day-to-day, especially me here in Florida, who gets hit with, really impactful hurricanes. I used to live in California where there was, weeks where I couldn't go outside without proper, masking protection, so breathing in smoke. So it's always been a really real part of my life as dealing with these effects of climate change. I mean, I literally don't take my dog for walks in the middle of the day because of the extreme heat here in Florida. So we know that climate change is an issue from a scientific point of view, but what we're finding is that for a lot of times, those traditional larger banks are still heavily invested in the fossil fuel industry. Obviously, there's still a heavy reliance on fossil fuels and therefore a need to lend to them. But what we're seeing is that those lending activities continue to increase. They're not backing down. So for us at Climate First Bank, it was going back to the whole, me as a consumer with a set of values. What bank am I supporting their lending practices for? Then for us, Climate First Bank becomes that option for folks that do believe in climate change, want to see more investments go into projects like renewable energy, solar panels, the greenification of infrastructure, and want a place to align those deposit dollars with their values. So when we say bank like tomorrow depends on it, it quite literally does, because we're trying to create a movement in which more investments are going towards projects that are needed most.
You're definitely disrupting a very traditional industry. Maybe we can speak to the genesis of the Climate First Bank coming to be. It is clearly a very different model. If you could maybe speak to that a little bit more about what makes it so different than maybe what most of our listeners are used to when we're talking about banking.
It might be helpful for me to tell just a little bit of a story on how Climate First Bank was founded.
Sure.
Our founder, CEO Ken LaRoe, actually started a bank a while ago. It was called First Green Bank. That was here in Florida. And First Green Bank had a very similar mission, and it was sold. And that mission didn't stay a part of our community. So he was actually reading a book called Project Drawdown that obviously details a lot of the projects and initiatives that would actually draw down carbon from our atmosphere, and was like, what if we paired climate solutions to these initiatives? There was a disconnect between we know what some of the solutions are, but where's the financing for them? Where's the capital for those projects? So that was a big reason why Climate First Bank was started. Was one, Ken had kind of had it in his heart to create this, model for change in the finance industry that didn't really get a chance to stick around, and saw that, we know what to do. It's just putting the capital behind it. So when we talk about what makes Climate First Bank different, it's really that. It's how do we shift capital in the direction of projects that are important to our future, and how we transition to renewable energies, or have more, EV charging infrastructure or greener buildings. So for us, it's all about how we invest in projects in those spaces, as well as educate those that are coming along for the ride, and things that they can do in their own businesses or own day-to-day lives to be more sustainable.
I'm sure that has played a part of it, but Climate First Bank is actually one of the fastest growing banks in the country, which is an amazing accomplishment. What do you credit that to? Is it that community angle, the maybe the trust in the bank itself? It seems like a really remarkable path.
Yeah, I would say it's really all about our mission. I think that's really set us apart in this space. I mean, there's, new banks, there's been community, banks that have opened here in the state of Florida. And I think our mission really set us apart, not only to, consumers and those, folks trying to find a new bank. It's helped us acquire some really incredible talent. I mean, I work with an absolutely amazing team, who I think is, works exceptionally hard, because we're working towards something bigger than just making profit for a bank. We're working on a larger mission, on how we bring value to our stakeholders, and not just our shareholders. And stakeholders obviously meaning like our community, actually my favorite word, our employees, our customers, our supply chains, and of course, planet Earth, which we all depend on. So I think that mission is kind of, if you were to take any segment of what we're doing and how it's growing, that's really at the core, at the heart of it, as to I think why we've been so successful just in 3 years.
And so you are based in Florida and Sunshine State. It obviously makes a lot of sense that your bank is directly linked with a lot of solar projects specifically, and offers a couple of different options that I don't think are necessarily very traditional through a bank. Could you speak to how the organization has been supporting the transition towards renewables within the state?
Yeah, so we actually have a sister company called One Ethos, where Climate First Bank and One Ethos are under the same holding company. So they actually developed technology for Climate First Bank in order to, provide an application process, or a whole loan process really, that helps us be able to do solar lending at scale. We kind of leveraged technology to be able to, instead of just getting applications from people as they come into the door, to having a technology platform that we can share with all of the solar installers here in the state of Florida. So I think as of end of last year, I mean, we had supported 1,870 households in a transition to solar energy. But so we have that to our advantage of like leveraging technology in order to do this at scale. But we also created a product that I think is pretty revolutionary, if you will. I think solar has kind of like, it's had a bad rap at times, and a lot in part because it's not always been a transparent product. So you have some financial products that maybe advertise a really low interest rate, but there's like a financing fee, or what they call a dealer fee, that gets tacked on. So you're paying 20-30% more for solar than you really should be, just to kind of get that poster rate. So for us, it was important to just automatically right off the gate say we're not going to charge those financing fees or those dealer fees. So that way the price of the system is the price of the system. We're very upfront with what our rate is. We amortize that over is it 25 or 30 years now for residential solar lending. So the goal being that as utility rates are increasing, that you can essentially replace that utility bill with a stable solar loan payment. So if I'm paying, $200 for electricity here in 2024, which might increase to, $250 in the years to come, if I locked in a solar loan rate at, $175 a month, I have that ability to save money in the future. And I also have that stability, not to mention like if you have all the battery backups and stuff, not getting to lose power during a hurricane is a nice advantage too. But yeah, I think it's the product, it's our technology partner, and it's really helped us do this at scale in a way that I think is it's transparent and it's fair, and it actually has an advantage, or provides an advantage to our customers that we're serving as well.
I would love to pick your brain too, being based in Florida. The topic of ESG can certainly be polarizing, and I would say absolutely politicized, especially in a year like 2024. How have you navigated that as in your specific role, and also just part of Climate First Bank, of just navigating what can maybe be a little bit of a sensitive topic, and then especially in an industry that's maybe not as used to talking about this kind of topic?
Yeah. Well, we certainly had a hard time with it. I mean, our name kind of really speaks for itself and draws a lot of attention. Sometimes very wanted attention, and sometimes maybe not so wanted attention. I think I talk a lot personally about the term belonging, and how at the end of the day we all just want to belong. So for me, it's been, and I think for us as an organization, has really been about finding common ground with people who might not agree with our mission or might not agree with how we view climate change. But there's always something that links us, especially when it comes to the environment. Since we're in Florida, I mean, we're obviously like, have a huge tourism industry here that relies on beautiful beaches and clean waterways. We have individuals here that like to hunt and therefore are really passionate about land conservation. I think when we find those things that unite us, and give us that sense of belonging, like we are in this together, that's really, I think, what helps us navigate this landscape, is that when we find that common ground and just can create the conversation around that, and how their values maybe at the end of the day do match with our own, we actually start having really productive conversations. And for us as a bank, has helped us, find a really diverse group of customers and, shareholders too. We're definitely not a bank completely led, or owned by Democrats. So we have a really lovely mix of individuals, and I think it's all because we've tried to find what we're all most passionate about. And really, at the end of the day, if you kind of maybe take the terms climate change out of it sometimes, we all do really care about the environment that we thrive on. So that for us, I think, has been how we've navigated it. I mean, we've tried to get a little bit more into talking about some of the research, and maybe potentially negative impacts of some of the anti-ESG bills that have come here through the state. So we're trying to use our voice a little bit more there. It's hard when you're a state regulated bank, to have a strong stance against the state itself. But we have incredible partners here, as well as other values aligned businesses that we're trying to create a united voice as to why we think some of these bills are more damaging to our local economies and small businesses. But yeah, I always go back to that term belonging, of just finding common ground with each other.